So, again, today we're talking about pantheons. The main pantheons of Dragon Pass, because there are a lot of pantheons in Glorantha. We have um, really more than I can shake a stick at. We're not going to talk like this. We're not really going to talk about the Praxian tribes yet. We're not going to talk about some of the Western tribes. We're really going to be looking at the groups that are linked together in Dragon Pass by a similar theistic view of the god type. Now, remember we talked last month about like the different views of the god type, right, and creation myths. So you have excuse me. You have the theistic view, which is, the gods made everything. You have the mystic view, the humanist view, and the animist view. For most people dwelling in Dragon Pass, this is really strictly a theistic view. Now, Evan has put together some great notes that we'll come back to here in a bit, but there's an official source for the HeroQuest voices that can be found if you have not gone to the well of Daleith at chaosium.com. It is filled with just a ton of great material for Glorantha. There's also, Evan pointed out that there is this great new, and here is my co-host now. There's this great new view of the RuneQuest starter set. They've been putting out design diaries for a while, and these design diaries are they're putting together a starter box, a lot like the Call of Cthulhu starter box, but really this is designed even to be more useful. Like for me, who's been running a Glorantha game for 3 years with RuneQuest Glorantha, they're purposefully trying to design this so that it works with everybody's campaign and it will be useful information. And then Evan, you posted here. Can you hear me, buddy?
I can hear you.
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
I can
Obviously
hear you.
can.
Huzzah!
Huzzah! Yes. Well, the hoary of the dark underworld have decided that our standard communication program isn't going to work. But I'm on my phone. Hi, everybody.
You are sounding delightful, and I am very glad to have you here. Do you want to? I've been just going through our introductory notes. Now, again, we don't get any. Yeah. I mean, this is a labor of love. This is not we are not necessarily shilling for Chaosium, but we love Chaosium. So the RuneQuest starter set is amazing. Evan, can you talk a little bit about this new 13th Age Glorantha stuff that you brought up?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things, and kudos to the community in the 13th Age Discord server, and our good friend Tim, who is the editor on Escalation, brought these to my attention. A couple of things. First of all, some time ago, the Johnstown Compendium announced that 13th Age Glorantha material would be accepted for the compendium, but we haven't seen much. There's a conversion document for 6 seasons in Sartar, which is great, but not much else has come out. However, Simon Phipp on the BRP Central discussion board, which is the official Chaosium discussion board, said that he has a forthcoming product that will have multiple new classes and ideas for adapting 13th Age classes for Glorantha that is supposed to be coming out. He had hoped that it would be out last month, but we all know how those deadlines sort of get pushed sometimes for things. So I'm hoping that this is still coming. But one of the things that he mentioned, and we should be able to post in the show notes, the discussion where he announced this, is that he had created a shaman class, which I think would be a very interesting addition. So I hope we will see that, and that this will herald a whole new set of products that will help expand and generate more excitement for 13th Age Glorantha, because, as you know, we here at Exploring Glorantha are big fans of that product and way of approaching Glorantha. And then somebody put up just a couple of homebrew classes also on BRP Central, and we can drop, I think, a link to that as well. A version to play an Isseries Golden Tongue style merchant, and also a Yamalio adapted from the Paladin, which I think are, things that were suggested in the back of 13th Age Glorantha, but not really fully sketched out. And so it's nice to see someone in the community, giving those a try and then just sharing them for free. And they're worth, I think, checking out at least.
I would agree with that. And speaking of the Johnstown Compendium, I just looked, I will be ordering a physical copy of it, but the Legion book, I don't know if you've looked at that, Evan. We'll need to look at that when we do our brew episode, because
absolutely
it is I think it's almost 200 brew NPCs statted out from everything from just lesser brew all the way up to named brew and rune priests and rune lords. So if you're one of those people like me who just wants more brew in your game, this is the supplement to go to. But the brew will be their own episode that will probably have a content warning when we get to that. For now, we're just going to dive right into our topic for today. So our topic for today is Pantheons, and we may have to split this up into two. I think I was very ambitious with my first outline, and 6 Pantheons in an hour is far too much. And so we're gonna dive in. So again, the Pantheons are the theistic view of the world. They are the people who they are worshipped by the people who believe that the gods are the foundational movers and creators of the world. So we have a lot of sources that were coming from this. Again, Evan and I both come from a slightly rigorous academic background, so we will be citing our sources. This will be from the Glorantha source book. This will be from the RuneQuest Glorantha material. And then I have lucked out several years ago to be at Gen Con and to get the, I don't know if we can zoom in on that a bit, the Gods of Glorantha preview edition, which will be coming out. They've been talking about the art that they're going to be doing. I don't know if you guys have checked out the new Monstrous Maleficorum, I believe is the title of it, from Chaosium, but where they got one artist to do all of the art. I think, don't quote me on this, I think that's the plan with Gods of Glorantha, so I'm very excited about this. But we're going to just dive in. Evan, do you want to say anything in general about the Pantheon, the theistic view, before we start looking at our first Pantheon? And I'm really glad that our good friend here, John, is here, because, John, the first Pantheon we're going to cover is, of course, the Darkness Pantheon.
Yeah. So the one thing that I would say is that we are approaching this first from a God time perspective. This is sort of an annex to our exploration of the God time. And of course, as the God's work evolves and then we move into time pantheons, we are looking at them in their sort of pure original form, the elemental pantheons that arise. But of course, later on, I think we will probably explore other cultural expressions of these. The more, focus more in on the trolls, or more in on, what is the mix that Praxians or other cultures adapt. But right now, we're going to look at them more in their pure elemental development as they arise out of the God time.
Right, and one of the things that we talked about is, there is this sort of ordering of the world in the theistic view of God time that starts with chaos, right? Kind of starts with sort of this unformless thing, and there's an escalation of order that we see not just in Glorantha. Greg was tapping into the Semitic tradition. He was tapping into sort of the biblical tradition. He was tapping into sort of this idea that out of darkness came the sea, and then the earth rose out of that, and then from that we start to get the sky, and then we'll talk about the other ones later. But I mean, right there we have a lot of the core elements of Greco-Roman mythology, Greco-Roman Platonic ideas of what the world is like. Even if you go back, as I said several episodes ago, to like Genesis 1, right? You have a formless chaos that then you have the Spirit of God hovering over the face of the waters, and then there's light, and there's earth, and there is water, and all of these elements. These are Campbellian archetypes that he's tying into. So we're going to start talking about the trolls, the darkness pantheon. So let me transition here. We've got some art that kind of shows how this all comes to be. And so, in some ways, the darkness pantheon is sort of the first pantheon, right? It's the darkness that sheltered creation before creation even sort of knew what it was. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes.
So one of the neat things that I'm really excited about the gods of Glorantha is one of the things that, and this goes all the way back to the original cults of Prax and cults of Terror. These are not pantheons like you would see in F20 games, where it's just like, hey, yeah, this thing exists, and that's all that we need to know. You are given reasons. Why is this cult still around? What does this cult believe in? Why does this cult's adherents still follow it? What sort of rewards does it give to people who follow both in this life and in the next? Where do I come from? What happens when I die? Why do I die? Each of the cults in Glorantha answers all of these questions for its members. So they're not sort of the gods kind of exist. This is very culturally and very embodied, incarnated belief of why someone would follow Kyger Lator or the Seven Mothers or Orlanth. And all of this has really strong ties to characters. We're going to talk about that as well. And yeah, Call pointed out that Dark Tongue, which is the language of the Darkness Pantheon, is the oldest recording language, at least in regards to the written languages of Glorantha. There's a great language tree in the RuneQuest Glorantha book that kind of shows how they all interact. But let's start with this. So the main adherents of the Darkness Pantheon are the trolls. They are essentially the Darkness rune plus the Man rune, and you get trolls. And they were spawned in the underworld, in the darkness, where they just loved everything about it, until Yelm died and brought the sun to the underworld. And that's why the trolls kind of rise up. But where did the trolls sort of believe the world came from, Evan?
Well, so darkness arises out of the sort of nothingness or chaos of the pre-being or unbeing of the universe, and then the first darkness deity, Nakala, the mother of shadow, is the darkness is really her womb, out of which the first beings, deities, and then other creatures descend. Everything that is tied to that primal rune of darkness, with the appearance of the form rune or the form runes, including the Man rune, then allowing the trolls to come forth. But that generation of mortal beings, or what will become mortal beings once death is discovered, is sort of late. But we start to see spirits and strange creatures that have primal secrets and deep primal hungers that are going to be carried through the whole line of the darkness deities and darkness creatures, first surface at the beginning of creation.
Right. And it's important to remember that in Glorantha, belief and ritual is culturalized. So, Evan, we're getting a little bit of an echo from you.
Sorry,
Could I
my
ask?
bad.
No, no worries. Um, so, so these are very embodied beliefs. Like the trolls, they are brought up in this culture, and that doesn't mean that you would not find servants of the darkness gods among the human pantheon, or among the human tribes, or even servants of the storm gods among the trolls. But it's important to remember these are deeply culturalized and contextualized people and beliefs. Evan, good to see your face, my friend.
Hey.
So the image I've put up here on the screen is sort of the pantheon of the trolls and how it starts at Nakala and moves down. Now, here's the thing: all pantheons also, they're not just interested in like how do we do magic and what's our stories, but there's also this what happens to our bodies and our souls after we die, and like troll or darkness followers believe that death was co-opted by the surface gods, that death rightly belonged in the underworld under the auspice of darkness, right? Orlan or Ermal and Humocht and all of the stories about how the sword of death is found, it's found in the underworld. And so there is this tension between the darkness tribes and the darkness pantheons and everyone else. You stole death. Death belongs to us. It's in the underworld. And so essentially what they believe is if you follow darkness when you go back to your home, the underworld, all of the surface gods, people who died, they're going to wander mindless. They're going to wander in sort of a shade-like existence, but those who follow darkness, they will consume the shades of those who follow the surface gods for all eternity, and that's sort of your reward. You are sentient, you are aware, you are welcomed home back into darkness, and as everything arose out of darkness, darkness will consume everything that was stolen from it, which I love. Like, I just feel like that is just a great view of why you would follow the darkness gods. Now, one of the other interesting things is even within pantheons, some of the stories are sort of contradictory. So, Evan, you posted something from the Tales of the Night Hag that's a little different. Do you want to share that one?
Yeah, sure. Well, so the Night Hag. So this comes from a collection. It is an older collection. It actually goes all the way back to RuneQuest 3 and the Gods of Glorantha released there, and then was added to and updated into what was then HeroQuest, now QuestWorlds document, which is available for free, which I think we'll also be able to post a link to, called HeroQuest Voices. So the Night Hag, of course, is a senior troll matriarch, a priestess of Kyger the Tor, telling their version of the of what happens in their teachings after death. And death is the natural state of the universe, she says. Our spirits are alive and keep us alive, and we have to be grateful to have a chance at all. It's a very fatalistic point of view, but we know that all life must end someday. Nakala created death to return Kyger Lator's lost children to her. So, the children wander away, but if they die, they come back to the womb of the underworld. Fearsome death is, yet it is only return to the underworld. When we die, our spirits meet with Kyger Lator. So this is the troll point of view. Kyger Lator, the great troll mother. We meet her in hell. So just going back to mom. Mom happens to live in hell, but that is where all the good things to eat are. And that is the tragedy of the trolls. They lived in this blissful place called Wonderhome, which was hell for anybody else. and they were driven out, and now they live in Hurtholm, which is the surface world.
Yeah. And now, if you play God's War, the amazing Glorantha board game produced by Peterson Games, the trolls start in hell because that's just where they were born. Again, Wonder Home versus Hurt Home, just great names that are evocative. Call, yeah, 100%. That's one of the things that I love about Glorantha is the fact that the stories do contradict, and sort of in between those tensions, that's what we get. We get stories from, like, which is true. Your Glorantha will vary, and that's very purposeful. Now, all of the Pantheons also sort of explain where spirit magic comes from, right? Spirit magic is sort of that ubiquitous magic that kind of exists in the world. When I was explaining it to someone, I feel like spirit magic is very much that conversation between Sam and Galadriel. I believe it's Galadriel. In Lothlorien, where it's like, ooh, can I see some elven magic? Were these made with elven magic? And Galadriel's like, you keep using that term. It's just the way we do things. And that's how I've always interpreted spirit magic. It's sort of the pervasive rites and practices and little invocations that ritualistically produce magical effects. But darkness says that all power comes from shadows. There's the gods and the spirits know all of the secrets because they were in the underworld before the rest of creation existed. Everything was contained in the underworld. And so they have, and we should point out that every Pantheon says this, we have the most powerful magic because we are superior, and that's why you should be part of our tribe. Their gods do their best to blast the souls of the lesser deities. In our home, darkness has the secrets of the ultimate power, which has been revealed. So for darkness members, it really comes down to, well, we had all of the secrets, and that's where our magic comes from. All of the rest of the gods, they stole from us, which is why they have lesser magic than we do. Now, we could talk about gods and spirits. We could do a whole episode just on each one of these pantheons because, again, Greg and everyone who poured into this world has developed just such amazing lore that it digs down into it. So I'm gonna, if you don't mind, Evan, I'm gonna take a quick aside. Yeah, Call. I know that he's on. So Call is saying George R.R. Martin kind of copied, or maybe not copied, but kind of used the same conflicting story things. And we know he's an RPGer. He's actually, I don't know if he still is, but at the time he was a huge Chaosium fan because his world of wild cards, the Mosaic novels that he put together, came from playing in his Super Worlds game, which was a Chaosium product. There's a fun little story, I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, that basically his game was so good, people were losing relationships over it, people were losing jobs, people were losing money, and they all made the decision they either had to make money at wild cards or they had to quit cold turkey. And so they decided to write these novels, and it was the novels that actually killed the game because people started digging into the writing of the stories, and that left no time to play the game. Another great Chaosium game if you get a chance to get your hands on it. So, Evan, let's do a brief overview of who, if you are a member of the Darkness tribe, if you are a troll, if you are a Dark Orlanthe, if you are Arcat, what are the gods, like, just brief overview, what are the gods that we would mainly worship as members of the Darkness Pantheon?
Yeah. So the most important is, of course, Kyger Lator, who is the mother of the trolls, and she is the most prominent darkness deity. I think in some ways, I mean, not only equivalent to Ernalda in importance in Orlanthe society, but even more so because the trolls are a matriarchal society. The female lines, you know, you become part of the females' family, and they go back to the great ancestresses of all the troll tribes and clans, and they keep secrets and spirits and ties to the ancestors. So any to be accepted into troll society, you're going to have to go through the most important people members who are going to be tied to this cult. And it is, it's even followed, of course, by the male trolls, because there is a subcult of her son Karg, who is the protector, who is the warrior, but he is subordinate. And so so that's going to be fundamental. Then there are other secret and magical gods that span into the troll worship. Anila, who is a secret magical goddess, but also tied to the moon, but also tied to water. She crosses multiple pantheons, and of course is important when we talk later about the lunar pantheon. And because of her link to trolls, some trolls actually are kind of okay with the lunars, but that's another story. So Anila, the goddess of the blue moon, so blue related to water, but maybe the first waters that secretly emerge from the darkness. So there's a lot of mystery surrounding this goddess, one of secrets, but also of doing things stealthily and secretly. And there are actually an order of troll assassins that follow Anila. So lots of great story ideas there. Then there's the god of surface darkness, who we met in the Lightbringer quest.
I'm just going to say that I need to do more research on lunar troll assassins for my game. Like that.
Sorry, guys.
We'll have a discussion off episode to discuss how to torture my players with lunar troll assassins. All right, god of surface darkness.
Yes, Arganagar, and he is the sort of the most approachable troll god, and is worshipped by many humans. And he, like in Orlanthe society, Isseries, the talking god, the god of exchange and trade and communication, Arganagar plays a very similar role, but of course he is the intermediary between trolls and other non-trolls, things that trolls normally want to eat, but sometimes they also want to trade with or communicate with.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my favorite pun in all of Glorantha is that the map book that came with the guide to Glorantha is called the Argar Atlas. So for anyone who needs to know where to go in Glorantha, they can refer to the AAA guide. Yep. Just a gloriously amazing pun.
Yeah. And to round out our discussion of largely troll society, but also that has an influence on darkness worshipping typically humans, but there are other races as well that tied to the darkness, are the twins Ziola Umbar and Zorak-Zoran, which you couldn't get two more different deities. Ziola Umbar, a very unusual troll deity, one that is tied to compassion, to gentleness, sort of the healing goddess, very tied to childbirth and motherhood. And of course, in a matriarchal society, that's enormously important. And so she has a very influential role in many ways. And then the flip side, to everything completely opposite. Her twin brother, Zorak-Zoran, god of hatred, of destruction, but also the great chaos killer of the troll pantheon. He is the berserk god of death, of war, of slaughter. These are the most fearsome individual warriors. They may not be, disciplined But when you have this kind of berserker warrior coming at you, there's going to be a lot of pain, and they accept anybody who's willing to be tough enough with them. So the most fearsome, brutish humans, and strangely, I know this sounds crazy, but of course, in our games, we play with the unusual. You may even find a Zorak-Zorani duck, because ducks do have this touchstone with not the darkness rune, but the death rune, which is prominent for Zorak-Zoran. So
now, also, my group has dealt a lot with the cults of Zoila Umbar and the cults of Zorak-Zoran, and I mean, when we do our troll episode, which is coming. I feel like we just keep teasing future episodes, but we're gonna do a whole episode on trolls. That one's for you, John. But the other thing is, one of the reasons that Zorak-Zoran is filled with so much rage is he stole fire from one of the sky gods. Yamalio is now known as the Cold Sun because his fire was stolen by Zorak-Zoran, and so there's this little bit of, is the fire consuming Zorak-Zoran? Is it he definitely has a switch where he goes full berserk. Also, one of my favorite classes in 13th Age Glorantha is the Zorak-Zorani Berserker. Rob and Jonathan did an amazing job taking the lore of Zorak-Zoran and making it into just a very thematic and wonderfully designed class. So, you're a troll, you're a darkness worshiper. What does that mean if we were to actually get into game? Well, so first of all, the Darkness Pantheon is one of the widest spread pantheons. Anywhere trolls are worshipped, you're going to have darkness worship there. In addition, there are humans living in other areas of the world, one of which is called the Kingdom of Ignorance, which is just amazing, that worship the Darkness Pantheon. Obviously, you can actually worship the Darkness Pantheon in RuneQuest Glorantha. You can make choices and worship that. And when the Gods of Glorantha book comes out, you're going to have so many more cultic options and rune spells. It's going to be amazing. And then Evan, if you follow Arcat, you probably also worship the Darkness Gods. It's complicated. Arcat changed his relationship status to it's complicated when they were talking about gods. We'll probably do an entire episode on the Arcat myth, but just know that Arcat starts as a human, comes back from the dead, and then sort of becomes a troll for a bit. No one really understands how that works, but it's one of the glorious things about Glorantha. You could also play as Dark Orlanthi. These are tribes that are descended from another group that kind of come into the Orlanthi tribes. They Ezken Keko was sort of the only old one who kind of helped foster this relationship. And there are a couple more. I'm going to I think if we're going to try and get through 3 today, we may have to sort of put this on hold. But one of the things that I think, if for players especially, if you're worshiping the Darkness Gods, one of the things to keep in mind is you're worshiping chthonic deities. You're worshiping deities of the underworld. Everything sort of comes back to this idea that darkness shelters, darkness consumes, and in darkness you will end. And for trolls, one of the things that comes out from that is everything is food. We are the true and first children of creation. Everything else exists to nurture and feed us. And so, as Evan said, if you play a darkness character, you can actually lean into this almost fatalistic, I don't want to say nihilistic, but it's sort of nihilistic for everyone else, right? We're all going to end up in the underworld. That's just the way it is. But Darkness Pantheon, we're going to end up on top. Any advice for GMs or players who want to focus in on the Darkness Pantheon, Evan?
Well, I think you already hit the nail on the head. That sense of fatalism, that the world begins in darkness and ends in darkness. There is particularly we'll come back to it in our discussion of the trolls, but there's a tremendous tragedy in darkness and the darkness pantheon because they start out as on top and they have nowhere to go but down. There is we have this discussion in the Tolkien elves, fighting the long defeat, and that sort of fatalism is definitely there for darkness. That they have secret powers and strength, but it is everything has been stolen from them. Things are repeatedly taken from them, and they are diminished. So there is this danger of going sort of the Zaraxaran route, where it is sort of nihilistic, like everything just has to be destroyed, and hatred is the only refuge. And yet that's not the path of the main culture, that there is this stoicism and strength from Kaiger Latour, from Ziola Umbar, and others. So there's this mix of fatalism, but great strength and pride. Sometimes it goes into just secrecy and duplicity, and sometimes just a mindless explosion of hatred. But there's this so much rich texture there. A lot of things to plumb for your games.
Right, and you kind of bring up a good point, right? Every pantheon has a view of what the world was like when it's perfect, and every pantheon is working toward restoring that. And for darkness, that's just, hey, guess what? Inevitably, we'll be back on top because you will all be dead. Call, I appreciate it. Call suggested that we go to bi-month, every 2 week exploring Glorantha sessions. That means a lot to me, man. I appreciate it. Well, we're going to transition. So as we kind of go from the darkness, the next pantheon that sort of rises up, quite literally, out of the underworld is the Great Sea. It is the Sea Pantheon. And the Sea Pantheon has also got a very fatalistic mindset to it. But it's different somehow than the Darkness Pantheon. And so we're going to get into this. So we've got this idea of the main adherents. We're going to kind of follow the same pattern as we go through. So the main adherents of the Sea Pantheon are the Triolini, which are the merfolk, or the water humans, essentially, right? Kind of when you get down to basics, the runes are super important to Glorantha because you can kind of mix and match them and create new things. Also, thank you to our viewer from last time who was like, JM should write up how to generate adventures using his rune discussion. I am thinking about how I would kind of put this together. But as we talked about, as I just mentioned, most of the worshippers of the sea gods are the merfolk. The humans who worship the sea gods are really along the coasts or along the rivers. So fun story about Glorantha. Why do rivers flow to the sea? It has nothing to do with gravity. It has nothing to do with land shape or anything like that. It comes from the fact that during the Battle of I Fought, We Won, where everyone is struggling against chaos, and every little resistance built up to the resistance that allowed Orlanth and the Lightbringers to bring creation back from the brink. Magasta summons all of his followers. Magasta is kind of the main god of the Pantheons, and says, we have to close this hole in the universe. And so all of the river spirits rushed down to the sea. And that's why rivers to this day flow to the sea. All right, so Evan, where did the world come from for this sea pantheon?
So there are of course a couple of stories, but the great underworld river, the Styx, which let's face it, Greg just this is such a good idea. Greg just took it from Greek mythology, and just like in Greek mythology, if you swear on the Styx, then it is a deep and binding and consequential doom-laden oath.
Yeah, not even Zeus can break a vow sworn on the river Styx. Not even Orlanth can break a vow.
Right. So the river emerges out of the underworld, and the waters and the mysterious waters spread. Another story is told that, of course, the source of waters, the original Ur being of water, Saramaka, the source moved him from within, then streams other beings out to spread and fill the darkness with the great primal waters, the oceans, the proto seas and rivers that will later feature in the God time and then in the mortal world. One of these stories, of course, comes from again HeroQuest Voices. I recommend that for the definitive statement of all this is likely to come in the Gods of Glorantha, but we have to wait for that. So we have to deal with the apocryphal texts and the texts that may not be perfect, but still evoke
if I may
and give us a connection
quick,
to Glorantha.
The HeroQuest voices have just been updated, and they are
really?
in the Gods of Glorantha book. Yeah, at least the manuscript I have. Right, this was years ago.
There you go.
This was 2018 that I picked this up. This was back when Moon Design were the people publishing. So there's probably been some drift. Right. There's probably been some revisions, but these HeroQuest voices are in this book.
Yeah. So, like I said, we can drop a link, and they're free, and they're very evocative. Again, great places to mine things for your game. So magic.
So first of all, what happens to
oh yes, death.
What happens to followers of the Sea Pantheon when they die? Well, here's the thing. They don't believe that there's anything that happens to you. You are not promised any damnation. You are not promised any eternal reward. You are promised to join with Magasta, the head god of the Pantheon. Your soul will drift to the nearest body of water. Your body will be dissolved. You will flow down into the massive whirlpool of Magasta's pool. And you will kind of join with these primal waters. And much like the sea the sea exists and it renews the waters and the life of everywhere else in the world, what was once you will be joined with others, and something new will be born out of it. So the sea gods really sort of believe in this cycle of reincarnation, much as, right, they understand that water falls from the sky, it flows down to the rivers, it journeys to the sea. There is this cycle of life, and that's what the Sea Pantheon sort of believes in. Now, how does magic work? Well, magic for the Sea Peoples for the Sea Pantheon, Sea Peoples, completely different topic. You can see where my brain has been this week. For magic is, again, very tied to their beliefs. There are currents and there are ebbs and there are flows in just sort of the natural rhythms of creation. And by tapping into these currents, manipulating, bending them, that's where magic comes from. It sort of permeates everything. It ebbs and flows. And by understanding this, that's how the Sea Pantheon peoples produce their spirit magic. Now, the thing is, they believe that they have the most powerful magic in the world because Magasta knows all of the secrets, because anything whispered in the world eventually travels to a river and eventually flows into Magasta's maw. Now, if I may, Evan, I'll take some of these sea gods because I love the Sea Pantheon. I adore the Sea Pantheon. I have not gotten to play someone from the Sea Pantheon, nor has my group made it to a coast, so not a whole lot there. But we do know that Anila is part of the Sea Pantheon somehow as well. The Blue Moon, the goddess of the trolls, is also part of the Sea Pantheon. But the main person to kind of keep in mind is Magasta. Magasta is the Lord of the Water. He is the son of kind of the founders of the Sea Pantheon. And he's like, his mouth is this giant whirlpool that sits between the two main continents of Glorantha. But we have a ton of other great deities in here. I'll let Evan do Dormal here in a second, but Gizzy is in here, who is he's one of the gods of the rivers. You have Oslira, who is I need to pull up my notes here. We'll let Evan do Oslira as well. And then,
Cool.
And then Zola Fell, which is one of the great rivers. It is, I guess the best touchstone for me is think of Greek mythology, where every river had its spirit or local god which inhabited it. Every spring, every pool, every river, every sea, those are the gods of the Sea Pantheon. So, Evan, take us real quick through Dormal and Oslira, please.
Sure, absolutely. So, first, I should say, of course, for our core Dragon Pass setting, we're somewhat removed from these deities because the coast, we're not quite there at the coast, and it hasn't quite been covered. But in the RuneQuest Glorantha book, of course, they refer to things, of the wolf pirates out on the oceans, and so it's important to understand that, and we can press out there by looking at the gorgeous maps and imagining where the waters could take us. So Dormal is important because he's not on our Pantheon sheet here that's on display, because he is actually a hero who has become a god. And how did that happen? Because for complicated reasons, for many centuries, the seas were swept clean of any craft. No one could sail. This will be something that I think we'll explore later, but it happened at the end of the Second Age, where there were things going on like the destruction of the God Learners, another topic for another time. And then for hundreds of years, no one could sail anywhere, seemingly. The seas were closed, and it was called the closing. Dormal discovered the secret of opening the oceans, not sweeping the dangerous spell that closed it away, but finding a way to sidestep it and get on a boat and go places. And he reopened the world. And so he is beloved by sailors everywhere, because it was not that nobody could be on a boat, but you could only be very close on shore or in a very sheltered bay or on the rivers. So not all knowledge was lost, but the vast voyages to other continents or to vast archipelagos of islands were shut off until Dormal rediscovered and then shared his secrets, and then was gained godhood through this. So this is very important. There's a lot. There are some not current sources for this sort of information. There's an old book called Men of the Sea. It's not perfect in terms of its congruence with what is going to be canon in the future, but again, it's a potential source for seafaring. If you want to play a pirate campaign right now, you've got to use the sources that are available. And there are some old fanzines, both the Tales of the Reaching Moon and which are hard to find, and Trade Talk, which many PDFs of many of the issues are available on DriveThruRPG, are there, and they've also explored that. Your Glorantha will vary. Oslira is the goddess of the Great Oslir River, which is sort of it's like the Volga or the Danube for the Lunar Empire. It is the great river transport heart of the area north of Dragon Pass. And there are many stories about gods trying to woo Oslira for her because she connects vast areas of land, and there's great water fertility from her. Great wealth flows on the Oslir River. So she is one of these major river goddesses. Of course, every creek and stream has some spirit, but there are just a few giant rivers. It's in, Zolafel is the one we know best because it's in Prax, but it's really, it's a major river for where it is, which is in the middle of the desert, but it's a teeny tiny, sort of secondary river compared to something like the Oslir, which is just massive and is tied to so many different cultures. So we see the waters being this mode of connection between many different cultures.
Right, and in a Bronze Age setting, rivers are so important for trade, for survival, as you said, in the desert. It's where cities are built. So the Sea Pantheon, while maybe not super important to Dragon Pass, is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. If there is water there, there is someone there worshiping the spirits that are among them. Now, one of the things we talked a lot about in the Darkness campaign, or in the Darkness Pantheon, it's also true of the Sea. If you are playing a member of the Sea Pantheon, you also have a fatalistic sort of. It's described as a grim faith. Also inexorable, right? The tide is inexorable. The currents are inexorable. If you follow the sea, you understand that fate flows the way it's going to. In the Guide to Glorantha, their myths are just filled with wholly depressing stories, right? Ancient wrongs never righted, hopeless battles against hideous doom. Magasta basically calling all of his followers to basically throw themselves into the mouth of the Chaos Rift in hopes that would close it. This is not a happy feel-good pantheon, but in the violent and sometimes bleak Bronze Age of Glorantha, there is hope in the fact that that this isn't it, and maybe next time around it'll be better. And that's where that cycle sort of reincarnation comes from. If you are playing in RuneQuest, if you're playing in RuneQuest Glorantha or HeroQuest, now called QuestWorlds, got to remember that. Members of the Water Pantheons are available to play in all of these, right? In 13th Age Glorantha, you take the Water Rune as your personal choice. They're actually, I don't know if the Triolani have been talked about as so with the RuneQuest starter set, they've just announced that they're also going to provide pre-generated characters for a lot of the non-human races. So if you want to take the adventures in the starter box, but John, if you want to run them as trolls, or Jenny, if you want to run them as ducks, I know how much you like ducks, you're able to do that. And so I'm sort of holding out hope that we're going to see some rules for the Triolani here in the not too distant future. Well, again, I thought we were going to get through 6 Pantheons in an hour. Turns out we're going to get through 2, and this will be a long series of episodes. But Evan, any final advice to GMs or players who want to play in either of these two pantheons. Maybe start with the sea, kind of dovetail back into the darkness, and then I'll give some final thoughts as well.
Sure, absolutely. Well, of course, the easiest thing, particularly if you're working in Dragon Pass, is for your water peoples to be river people. And for example, it's noted in RQ, the main book, that river speech is a unique and ubiquitous language. People who live along the rivers, who have their beings tied to those rivers, they have this common speech throughout Glorantha, throughout Genertella. And so there is this, sort of almost, it's almost like could be a secret society, or a hidden sub society that others maybe take for granted, that those who build reed boats and step in the marshes and hunt fish and amphibians. And so that's a really interesting background, both as maybe allies or as a source of a character. And their ties are going to be to the rivers that flow through places, and that will be interesting. If you're more adventurous and you want to start heading out onto the oceans, you're going to be out ahead of the official supports. But there's a lot of interesting things that you can do there. In terms of darkness, well, darkness is everywhere, of course, and the trolls can be found in many hidden refuges throughout Genertella, and the humans that have contact with them, many of them will, in order to have relationships, also have a darkness cult. And maybe there is a particular set of families that, those are the ones that deal with the trolls, and so they follow that. Again, a rich rich opportunity for interesting role playing, whether you are setting them up as NPCs or if this is the source of your party, or at least a member of your party.
Yeah, and I think you brought up the wolf pirates. If you roll on the genealogy tables in the RuneQuest Glorantha game, you are definitely going to see the wolf pirates come up, especially as we get into the Hero Wars, which I feel like might be a good time to announce that Chaosium also announced that they're doing 2 box sets. They're doing the starter box, but they are working on the grand campaign of the Hero Wars in Dragon Pass. So this is a campaign that we've been promised for a very long time. Evan has been waiting on the edge of multiple seats for decades for this thing. Jeff Richards has said that it's going to be kind of analogous to the Great Pendragon campaign for Pendragon. I am super excited about that. The Wolf Pirates will play heavily into those stories. If you've read King of Sartar or read Prince of Sartar, the webcomic, they kind of come up. Another possible way to play with the Sea Pantheon that we didn't really talk about are the Newtlings. Now, the Newtlings kind of are in Prax. They're sort of these Newt people. They're kind of the slaves of, or were the slaves of the Dragon Newts. They exist along the rivers. They exist along the coasts. And while they are typically either follow kind of the Dragon Newts as their gods or ancestor worship, they are so tied to the rivers and they are so tied to the coast that playing a Newtling who worships the river or the Sea Pantheon might be a really great way to sort of bring these people in, bring this pantheon in at kind of at the start of a game. So, well, that brings us to exactly an hour. It looks like Evan is having a little bit more technical difficulties. So I will say, from both of us, thank you all for tuning in. Chat, it has been amazing to see you in here. If you guys don't know, Iconic has a Patreon. And if you are a member of our Patreon, not only do you get to to be part of this live episode, but we have a very active Discord server, as most people do these days, and patrons are invited to come on there. We talk about Glorantha. Evan and I are constantly on there talking about this show, our love of Glorantha, what we're doing in our games. So if you have not checked out our Patreon, go check out our Patreon on Iconic Production. You can also please subscribe here on YouTube. We love seeing comments, interacting with people here on YouTube, and hopefully you enjoyed this show. We will be talking next month about the Earth Pantheon and the Sky Pantheon. Kind of saving Storm and Lunars here for the end of this arc, because that's really where the focus of the Pantheons in Glorantha is. So, Evan, any final sign-offs before we go, my friend?
Well, as always, our hope is to connect all of this obscure and fascinating lore to your play at the table. And I think that we have lots more to bring. It's a fascinating and amazing world, and as we go on to explore the Earth and the Sky Pantheon, I think we're really going to bring a lot of interesting things to connect to your 13th Age Glorantha game, your RuneQuest Glorantha game, or your QuestWorlds, or your homebrew. Go out there and explore Glorantha, because it's amazing.
It is amazing, and as Evan just pointed out, right, we're starting getting into the pantheons that are really about Dragon Pass. So the Asrolians, the Earth Pantheon, the Yamalios, those who Yamalioites, those of the Sundome, who kind of worship those gods. That's what we're going to be getting into next time. So until next time. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. It has been a great time just chatting with you all and talking about Glorantha. We will see you in a month for Earth and Sky. Until then, I am JM. This is my co-host, Evan. We hope you enjoyed this. We will talk with you soon. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
I feel like, Evan, I thoroughly enjoy just hanging out and chatting with you about Glorantha and
Agree.